Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our round 3 of the Saturday matches for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. I am psyched to finally be joined on the mic this season with my friend Stefan Mott. I'm psyched I've been able to kind of watch as how well your team has been doing throughout the season. So it's great to kind of finally get to be on mic and do some co-casting with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. We've never co-casted together, I don't think. I don't think we did last season. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, I'm excited. It's gonna be fun, and we've got a pretty awesome match to kick off our co-casting journey together, Maeve.
I know, I'm psyched, right? This is the match today, the first one that we're able to show that has what has a little bit more of stakes kind of moving into these playoff rounds, right? It is here with Sam Pandelis and Kenneth De Jesus. So, it's something that I'm psyched to see. You don't oftentimes get to cast for players that, as many players as we've been able to cast that have done so well, even in the Worlds format. Remember, Sam was a finalist for the World Championships just a couple of years ago. So, it's really exciting to kind of see as well, even for Puerto Rico to be doing as well as they've done this season. So it's really exciting to me to see how many players and how many teams, the variety between players and teams this year.
Yeah, and this is a match, and you mentioned this briefly. This is a match that does have some importance for the greater picture of the potential top 16. China has already recorded a 5-1 loss to France, so of course that still will have the last two matches played out. China could improve their tiebreakers, but if Sam Pandelis manages to win this set, it's gonna take an act of God for China to actually advance. So Sam basically has the power to eliminate China and make sure that Australia is joining France in the top 16 with this individual set.
Yeah, and Australia definitely has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder after last year's World Cup being paired with the United States and New Zealand in that very first group and not moving on. So you know that there is a lot on the line for them, both pride-wise and I think just in terms of practice for Worlds in the next few weeks. I know a lot of the Australian players are currently in the process of flying out because it is just such a long journey for them. So really excited to be able to feature an Australian team this week with Sam Pandelis. And having Puerto Rico kind of the opposite side of the world as well from Australia, it shows a lot of potential, I think, to be a really interesting game. So if we want to go to the breakdown between Australia and Puerto Rico, between these two teams currently, Australia is up 2-0 over Puerto Rico. So like you said, this is Sam Pandelis' time to shine, I think, for the Australian team.
For sure, and he's been doing a really, really good job throughout this tournament. Not one of the undefeated players, but he's recorded 2 wins already, and of course, using the Melbourne regional winning team for this match, he's putting himself in as good a position as possible to make that a positive win rate going forward into a potential round of 16 next week, or I guess next week that is played. We have a bit of a break after this for Worlds, obviously, but going up against Kenneth here, who has been doing a pretty solid job as well. A 3-2 record in this tournament, which is a marked improvement from the 2021 World Cup. So it's really nice to see that personal improvement. Bit of a storyline there for Ken, is doing really, really well. And it would be really nice to cap that improvement by beating one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, and I mean there is no greater pride than being like, I've staved off knocking out another team for a little bit longer. So I think for Kenneth, like you said, there is a lot to be gained if you beat a player that is so good. I remember, like, even just in my own playing days, if I even took one game out of a best of 3, I remember just feeling a lot of pride in it. So you've got to imagine how exciting and how a little bit, nerve-wracking it can be to be on this kind of stage, and especially having your game streamed. So very thankful for both of these trainers for providing this footage for us to be able to watch for this round. And I think also that group is really interesting, right? Australia really hoping to kind of get a move forward and getting China out of the picture, because China did really well last year as well. And they're always a team that's very tough, and they bring a really interesting set of team building skills, just because oftentimes they're in a little bit more of a secluded network of tournaments, right? So we don't always get to interact with those players. Sam Pandelis, though, like we've said, incredibly talented player, World Championship finalist in 2017, World Championship top 16 in 2016, and has won 5 regionals, so nothing to shake a stick at here. Kenneth De Jesus, currently only showing that he played in the World Cup last year, but that is still incredibly nice to have any sort of preparation or prior experience in a World Cup format is truly invaluable.
It really is going into this, and it's going to be interesting to see just how much that experience with preparation is going to show in this set. Of course, when you have an opponent like Sam Pandelis, who's coming in with a team that we know he's used before, it's a very well-known team that people are aware of, that, it's one that you should prep for if you're matched up against Sam here. So it's going to be interesting to see if Kenneth has prepared something special with the Lunadon team that he's using. We can see the teams on screen right now, and there it is. That Melbourne Regional winning team for Sam Pandelis, the colossal Yveltal Zacian team. Of course, you have the Urshifu Rapid Strike in there for Aquajet shenaniganry. But on Kenneth's side, we have the Lunadon team that was most notably used by Gavin to win the Vancouver Regional. So a battle of two regional winning teams going up against one another here in this set.
Yeah, and I mean, this Lunadon team, like you said, we have seen it everywhere. I think I've commentated at least 5 World Cup matches with it. Every player who has played it, they also tend to put their unique spin on it, whether that be how they train their Pokemon or if there's any sort of moves or tricks to it, or trick on Grimmsnarl, I guess is another way of putting it. But it's something that, you may see the team a lot, but every trainer kind of tends to pilot it differently. Sam's team is, like you said, he has been using it. He's incredibly consistent with it. But Colossal is a Pokemon that is not exactly as popular now as it used to be, especially thanks to these restricted formats. So there are definitely opportunities to kind of deal with Colossal. And, I think it's going to be up to Kenneth to, if that does end up coming to the game, to kind of find a way to deal with it early before it can start setting up some big damage. But you have opportunities for residual damage of your own with something like a Gigantamax Venusaur, a Gigantamax Charizard, Venusaur and Grimmsnarl being the leads here from Kenneth, while we're seeing from Sam the Yveltal and Incineroar.
All right, so not the super offensive, crazy go-burr leads that we could have seen. No Colossal on the side of Sam, no Charizard on the side of Kenneth. Opting both players here to just maybe slow down the game a little bit. You have the threat of the Sleep Powder from the Venusaur. The Yveltal on this team, I believe, tends to be an Assault Vest variant, so you have the opportunity to go for Snarl, maybe go for an Airstream here. We do see Sam maybe going for the Dynamax. It's going to be interesting to see if Colossal plays any role in any of these games. We can assume it's probably not in the back since we have the Yveltal Dynamaxing. But here we go. This is going to be a big, big moment here. If a Sleep Powder manages to land, that's going to be big. But I think we did see Fake Out go into the Venusaur.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're this Incineroar, right, you're possibly just trying to stop this Venusaur from doing any massive damage and maybe trying to go for it with something like a Max Airstream, like you said, just trying to get the speed up on your side and allow for this Yveltal. Once it gets a couple of speed boosts, can be pretty tough to deal with, but Protect to possibly stop from the Fake Out from this Incineroar is going to happen for this Venusaur, so Venusaur not taking any Fake Out, not too worried about losing a turn here. Light Screen from the Grimmsnarl, just trying to boost the special defense for the Pokemon on Kenneth's side. Interesting to see the screens as well, but Max Airstream going into this Venusaur still does a little bit of damage. If there is a Focus Sash on that Venusaur, which sometimes there can be, it is nice to get rid of that early, and just getting a speed boost as well never hurts.
Overall, though, I feel like Kenneth is going to be very, very happy with that first turn, managing to stall a turn of Dynamax there for effectively very little damage. The Grimmsnarl also able to start setting up on that side of the field as well. So the Grimmsnarl is going to leave the field here, and this is a great opportunity for the Groudon to come in and maybe Sleep Powder to land. I'm wondering if the Venusaur is going to be faster than the +1 speed on the Yveltal, but given the play by Kenneth, yeah, it's going to be a very fast Venusaur there, opting for probably the max speed Timid, and that's a sleeping, very, very lazy Yveltal that's going to waste its second turn of Dynamax as well.
Flare Blitz from the Incineroar here going into that Venusaur slot is going to be able to get that knockout, but I think that Venusaur is pretty comfortable with what it was able to accomplish with its one turn of movement besides that Protect. The Yveltal, like you said, is going to be sleeping for a while, and there is no better way of stopping those all-important Dynamax turns than by just putting it to sleep and making sure that it can't really do much of anything, and allows this Groudon maybe to kind of put on some big pressure, or this Charizard even as well. And Charizard in the sun is pretty comfortable.
This is a really awkward position for Sam all of a sudden. Solar Power boosted Max Airstream is very likely to be able to KO the Incineroar. If Yveltal wakes up, then all of a sudden this is a little bit better, but if Yveltal stays asleep, then there's the potential for a KO'd Incineroar, speed boosted Dynamax Charizard, and then also a speed boosted Groudon, and things can really start to spiral very, very quickly in Kenneth's favor.
Yeah, immediately going to see a Dynamax, most likely that Gigantamax here, that Gigantamax Charizard coming out. Charizard, like you said, having that solar power boost is going to be incredibly strong. If it's that Life Orb variant as well, then we know it's going to be putting out a bunch of pressure and a bunch of pain onto this Incineroar with something. But instead, the Yveltal wakes up this turn and gets its own max Airstream off into the Gigantamax Charizard. Does a pretty decent chunk of damage, but most importantly, continues to boost the speed so that you are not caught running slower than something like that Charizard and that Groudon. Parting shot from the Incineroar as well. A great move to drop that special attack on the Charizard on the opposite side of the field, and maybe allow for you to pivot a little bit into something that can possibly deal with this Groudon a little bit more comfortably. Sending in this Rillaboom here is going to be a great way to possibly deal with that, unless you're taking a G-Max Wildfire. But having the opportunity to maybe go for something like a Grassy Glide into that Groudon is something that is really nice, and it also fake out pressure maybe if you have the opportunity to go for it.
Yeah, that wake up is gigantic there. Of course, the secondary speed boost allowing the outspeed for the Incineroar to just get it out, and sacrificing the Rillaboom is totally fine. You get to bring the Incineroar back in, get an Intimidate down onto the Groudon. Of course, this turn the Groudon is not likely to find a ton of damage or utility into this Yveltal here. Stone Edge is going to hit. It's going to be able to do a little bit of damage there, but still, you know, that's not the end of the world there. And a -1 Charizard now is going to struggle to find the damage that it needs to, especially with the threat of Snarl coming out from that Yveltal after its Dynamax is over.
Yeah, that was an absolutely huge wake-up, right? You said it put him in such an awkward position, but I think Sam had his fingers and toes crossed and was just hoping for that wake-up that he was able to get. The Intimidate, lowering the attack on that Groudon, like you said, and also having that already parting shot onto the Charizard. I think it's nice that Sam's been kind of able to monitor switching that Incineroar in and out with either a parting shot or just kind of getting it in thanks to that knockout on the Rillaboom that he purposefully took. And I think just kind of trying to mitigate the damage that Kenneth has and maybe forcing his Pokemon to try and switch out, maybe just not be comfortable or do as much damage. Like this Groudon switching out right now for Kenneth's side, sends in the Grimmsnarl, who we saw a little bit earlier on in the match, who was able to set that light screen earlier. Yveltal, though, going for the Snarl. Nice to drop the special attack of this Charizard on the opposite side of the field, and it did connect on both targets. So, you know, even though there was possibly some extra damage from this G-Max Wildfire that comes every single turn, you are now at another dropped stage of special attack, and that was important because now your Yveltal is able to live that G-Max Wildfire, and Incineroar gets another parting shot up onto the field, onto this Charizard, who is now at -3 stages of special attack.
Yeah, I don't know if Sam was expecting the Charizard to still do that much damage. That Yveltal is definitely going to go down to the residual damage here at the end of the turn, so that's a pretty big deal. Zacian coming in here is, of course, a pretty solid anchor Pokemon to have as well, but taking a bit of chip damage from the residual is going to be equally annoying for that, because it's going to help out with things like the Precipice Blades that oftentimes won't be able to land a one-hit KO. So, you know, that residual is going to be very, very valuable here for Kenneth. And Sam, all of a sudden, down to just 2 Pokemon, despite managing to get that first turn wake up, getting a parting shot in, a Snarl before that second hit. Kenneth's Charizard is just applying so much offensive pressure here still, and it's really becoming an issue for Sam.
Incineroar coming back in here for that fainted Yveltal slot, who went down to that G-Max Wildfire residual damage. Intimidate not really doing all that much here to really kind of worry either of these 2 Pokemon, but some fake out pressure could be really nice. You have the opportunity as well for something like a parting shot if you want to go for it and not have to worry about switching out, just getting those drops. But I think this Charizard is about as low in its special attack as it could possibly get. So, you know, at this point, I think with the speed boost as well that the Charizard has, you know you're going to be faster than the Zacian. The Zacian may just be forced to protect here on this turn. Incineroar, though, goes for the fake out first into that Grimmsnarl, just preventing it from doing any sort of funky things with that Prankster ability. But G-Max Wildfire from the Charizard onto this Zacian does enough to get the knockout here, actually. A ton of damage thanks to that Sun Boost as well. And, I mean, I think at this point, right, Sam is a little bit, Sam is kind of having to rethink what he's going to want to do for that next game.
Yeah, the speed boost on that Charizard just making it too fast for the Zacian to deal with there, and Kenneth is going to run away with this game now. Light screen wears off, so at least Sam's able to confirm that it's not Light Clay. That's a little bit of extra information that he gets going into the next game, but overall, a very solid game number 1 for Kenneth, even despite that turn 1 wake-up on the Yveltal. So, you know, not even getting the best RNG, but still, Kenneth managing to take down game number 1.
Yeah, and I think right if you're Sam and you're kind of looking forward into that next game, you may just have to consider, I think, maybe having the Yveltal up was having it as your Dynamax option may have been nice to get that speed boost early, but I don't think the Yveltal was able to put off enough offensive pressure to keep up with the Charizard on the opposite side of the field, even if you were able to kind of get those drops onto it. So I think it's going to be an interesting way to see how the leads change for Sam on his side, and if the leads change at all for Kenneth, because if he wants to stick with that same game plan, it may just be tougher for Sam to kind of counteract.
Yeah, Venusaur is always a really oppressive lead anyway, because you do have to worry about the Groudon switch in for Sleep Powder shenaniganry, you have to worry about a potential Dynamax, and arguably Yveltal Incineroar is probably the best lead that Sam has into the Venusaur, and it just already didn't work. I didn't hate the play that Sam went for turn 1 at all. A lot of Venusaurs won't even carry Protect. It has been rising again in popularity in the meta, but there was a good period of time where people just were not running Protect on Venusaur. It was just, oh, well, if I want to Protect, I can Max Guard with my Sleep Powder. But, having that Protect, managing to stall out that first turn, and more importantly, stall out the Fake Out. But, there's a lot of good information that was gathered there by Sam. You know that it has Protect. That's a big one. You know that it's going to be probably max speed Venusaur. Some people will run a slower Venusaur that just gets the outspeed on Caloric Shadow Rider, just to have some of that bulk and to maybe make it work a little bit better in the Trick Room. But this is going to be that max speed Venusaur most likely. So a lot of information has been gathered by Sam. And a player with the kind of pedigree that Sam has and the experience that Sam has will most likely be able to use the information gathered to, alter the Game 2 game plan a little bit and maybe tilt things a little bit more in his favor. But it's going to be an uphill battle for sure. Kenneth just looked like his team was just dominant in that first game.
Yeah, and I think one thing that was interesting that you mentioned as well is that Grimmsnarl not having that light clay. Instead, though, Charizard and Venusaur are going to be the lead here, and the Incineroar and Zacian. So it is a little bit of a early gen, late gen Pokemon battle at this point. Zacian getting that Intrepid Sword boost right out of the gate, and some nice fake out pressure from this Incineroar.
This is also just kind of the worst to face down. I hate this lead. I hate it so much because it's like, it's straight up just a 50-50. It's like, well, the Groudon's coming in on one of these sides and one of these things is gonna just do things. Which one's it gonna be? And it's just a big old prediction game. But it forces your opponent into an uncomfortable position already. So when you're up 1-0, I really don't dislike the idea here from Kenneth. I do feel for Sam, though. This is like the most annoying thing to see. And we're not even seeing a Groudon switch in. There's a third option that I didn't even realize was there, Maeve.
Someday there's going to be a fourth option of 2 Gigantamaxes, and everyone's going to have a really rough time. But Gigantamax Charizard is the option here for Kenneth. That was his Gigantamax choice between the 2 Gen 1 starter Pokemon. We saw how oppressive this Pokemon is in Game 1. Absolutely no surprise that this was sent out in this game. Zacian going for a Behemoth Blade here. No Protect necessary, no worry. Going into this Gigantamax Charizard. Does well over 50% of its HP, which I'm sure is nice to have now, especially without the sun up. Charizard going for a max airstream, though, to boost the speed of it and its partner Venusaur. Without the sun, though, it's not a knockout onto this Incineroar. But again, the speed boost is going to be really huge, especially because there is no way for Sam to match speed on the opposite side of the field. And this is going to allow for this Venusaur to go for Sleep Powder and connect onto this Zacian, who will now no longer be able to move at the start of next turn.
Yeah, we already saw how much damage that Charizard could dish out with -2 in the sun. So the parting shot from Sam, it's nice. You get to weaken that Dynamax Pokemon, and, getting a successful parting shot off on your opponent's turn 1 max is not very many better feelings for an Incineroar player, but it is a Charizard, and we saw how little it cared about that last time around. So with a speed boost already, the chance to bring in the Groudon, and also just the chance to just keep clicking Sleep Powder, like, that's the other problem, right? Like, the Venusaur has a speed boost now. It doesn't need Sun to outspeed stuff. The Zard, even at -1, might be able to pick up the Zacian with the residual, but it does look like the Zacian is very bulky, so I don't know. This is going to be a wild turn. It's going to be a very pivotal turn to see how the rest of this game goes.
Yeah, I mean, looking at its HP that we can see, right, you know that sometimes the faster kind of adamant Zacians that are run have a little bit of a lower HP stat, so you have to assume maybe that Sam is packing one that has a little bit more bulk to it, like you said, may be able to deal with something like a G-Max Wildfire from this Charizard a little bit more comfortably, especially without the sun up. But again, this Venusaur is just so oppressive on the field right now, right? Zacian switching out, not even going to try and take that turn of sleep, sending the Incineroar back in. I think Fake Out is going to be really nice to have. You can always go for something like a Dynamax and Max Guard, and then Fake Out the next turn, and then go for something like a Max Airstream into that Venusaur slot. I think that might just be kind of your best bet to deal with the Venusaur. But Yveltal's actually also switching out here and is going to bring in the Rillaboom, so a little bit of grassy terrain, possibly once again trying to stop something like that Sleep Powder into the slot where the Rillaboom is. Not going to worry too much about it thanks to its grass typing.
I think that's a really, really nice play here by Sam. The most obvious and clear play for Kenneth is to Wildfire the Zacian and Sleep Powder the Yveltal. You want to cover for that, but it's still enough to KO the Incineroar despite -1, despite the resistance, and despite no sun. The Charizard with the Life Orb, I think really Sam was just hoping that the Incin would be able to take that hit because of the -1, and as a Fire type, the Incineroar would not take damage from the Gmax Wildfire residual either. So I really liked the play in concept, but the fact that that Incineroar does end up going down makes that a lot more painful for Sam than it could have otherwise been.
I do not know what Kenneth has been feeding his Charizard, but it is incredibly strong, and it is incredibly tough, I think, for Sam on his end to just try and deal with it. You know, it's not like it's a Pokemon that you can really power through as comfortably. If you are this Yveltal and you want to go for the Dynamax, if you go for something like that Max Airstream, you still may be slower. You may have to rely on something like a Sleep Powder Miss, which is, you know, it's a chance, you know, and you may just have to kind of play to that chance and try and get your own speed up. Rillaboom also has the opportunity to go for Fake Out this turn. Like you said, the Venusaur has that Protect, so that could be something that you may just kind of be targeting into without getting anything out of. Also, kind of peeking from behind the screen here, seeing the moves that Rillaboom has. It's running Wood Hammer and Grassy Glide, right? So it's not carrying any sort of ground typing moves. It's not carrying something like Knock Off, any sort of dark typing moves here as well. But Yveltal going for Sucker Punch into the Charizard isn't enough to get the knockout, but it is incredibly close, and that Grassy Glide is enough to take care of that Charizard. So you are able to get that giant threat off of the field, but you still have the threat of something like that Groudon in the back.
Well, the other big thing here is that the read was on the Protect for the Venusaur, but the Sleep Powder misses anyway. So I think really Kenneth would have been very okay with losing the Charizard if the Yveltal went to sleep, but that miss makes that hurt quite a lot. But again, no Protect there essentially means the Venusaur has 2 shots to get that off. Because, there's no Fake Out pressure now. The Rillaboom's been out for a turn. And he can just click Sleep Powder into the Yveltal once again. Surely it won't miss twice, right, Maeve?
I mean, surely, right? Unless you are incredibly unlucky. But because I said it would miss in the last, before the last turn, I commentators cursed it for that turn, and there is a good chance I would do it once again. I think at this point, right, if you're Sam, because we haven't seen the Groudon come out, you have the opportunity to maybe go for something like that Max Airstream, but then it would be a great chance to switch the Groudon in later and get your Venusaur to go faster, and then once again get more opportunities for those Sleep Powders. Venusaur has just been able to sit on the field and it's the mental mind game of it being there is huge, but instead it's the Rillaboom who is going to be the Gigantamax option here. Going to possibly be able to go for something like a Gmax Drum Solo and do some nice damage onto the Grimmsnarl on the opposite side, but Thunder Wave is a great move to slow it down. Gonna give that Rillaboom a chance to be fully paralyzed. Sleep Powder as well onto the Yveltal. Another Avoid! So I did curse it. I am so sorry. Yveltal going with the Oblivion Wing here into that Venusaur. Super effective move. Does bring this Venusaur down all the way to the, actually not showing a Focus Sash here. Maybe just a couple of HP that it's hanging on from. Possibly something that was calced in. But a Gmax Drum Solo with the Rillaboom into the Grimmsnarl is enough to get the knockout. So Sam really kind of looks like he rolled really lucky today and should possibly buy a scratch ticket.
For sure. Another big thing, though, is the choice to Dynamax the Rillaboom there. A fantastic decision with the Charizard being off the field. You know that with a lead like Venusaur Charizard, you can assume that the last Pokemon's going to be a Groudon. The Venusaur living there is nice. You can Sleep Powder into the Yveltal one more time. Of course, Sucker Punch will not work. It's not using an attacking move. But now Kenneth is really relying on that paralysis. I do think Thunder Waving onto the Rillaboom is a great way to cover for that Dynamax option. But really needs to actually come in with full para or two to allow Kenneth to get through here. One might be enough, depending on what moves the Groudon is running. You know, maybe it's running Fire Punch and can actually hit the thing super effectively without Heat Crash being ignored by Dynamax. But This is a big turn. We really just need to see Sleep Powder hit and full para to go off in order for Kenneth to have any chance at the rest of this game.
Yeah, and I think Sam has truly kind of clawed his way back in here, right? He knows what his win con is, and he is playing to it, which is absolutely what you should be doing, especially in a stage like this. Sleep Powder, no! Oh my goodness! Oh, Yveltal avoids it for the third turn in a row. That is insane. Gets the Oblivion Wing off, gets the knockout onto this Venusaur, gets a tiny little bit of HP back in return, and that is, maybe he's got a Bright Powder Yveltal. Maybe that's what he's running at this point, right? You almost would have to wonder. Stone Edge from the Groudon does at least connect into this Yveltal, does bring it down almost close to the bottom 25% of its HP, but GMAX Drum Solo into this Groudon is going to be incredibly nice and do so much damage, but oh my, we are going into a game 3 here that I was not expecting to be a game 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is there is a group of people, I think it's safe to say, in VGC who say that if you sit on the field with Venusaur all game and do nothing but click Sleep Powder, you kind of deserve to miss 3 in a row. But that is a 1.5% chance of actually happening there, so a little unfortunate, especially when you factor in that there was a turn 1 wake up on the only Sleep Powder to hit in the last game. So maybe Sleep Powder is just not the most reliable way for Kenneth to approach this game number 3.
Oh, but I would double down, right? Just emotionally, I would feel the need to double down in game 3 and just click Sleep Powder every single turn.
Surely it won't miss 4 times in a row, Maeve.
Correct, exactly.
Surely
correct.
Not.
It couldn't
That's how
happen.
statistics works.
Oh, this is, I feel like I have the worst commentator's curse. I think I've commentated every single Lunala Meteor Beam miss, Sleep Powder misses, just terrible. I shouldn't be allowed to say move
my
names.
games and like predict my opponent to hit all their moves. Does that count as match fixing?
I don't know. I would be afraid to do it. I don't want to lose my chance here, right? I don't want Victory Road to fire me for jinxing the games.
Oh man, this is a wild one though.
This is a wild game 3, right? And we were talking about how Sam needs to win this game, right? And Sam understood the fact that he needs to win this game and is now forcing a game 3 with truly some incredible sets of circumstances. So, I mean, getting back to the more serious talk, right? That Charizard Venusaur lead, like you said, it forces them into such an uncomfortable 50-50, and then you didn't even bait for that 50-50. So having the Charizard Grimmsnarl lead, kind of going back to the roots of game 1 here. Once again, like you said, that Grimmsnarl does not have the Light Clay, so you know maybe if it does get something up that can possibly resist some damage on that side of the field, it's not going to last as long. The Zacian and Yveltal double restricted lead from Sam on the opposite side of the field, showing a lot more offensive pressure this turn.
Honestly, this looks like a way better lead for Sam than the last game. This looks pretty good for him, in fact. Now, we do know that the Grimmsnarl has Thunder Wave. The Zacian has to respect that. Thunder Wave plus getting hit with a G-Max Wildfire would probably mean getting deleted off the field. Kenneth, though, opting to go for it. Maxing here with the Gigantamax Charizard. Despite the potentially awkward situation here, so deciding, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I think we did see Sam click Protect. There is also Substitute on that Zacian, so plenty of ways to deal with a potential Charizard here. Kenneth is going to want to be going for an Airstream here. I think that's his best case scenario, but I think that's probably also what the Yveltal is doing, so, you know, it's an interesting situation now. Game 3, Dynamax is on both sides, turn number 1. We'll see who gets more momentum.
Yeah, and I mean, something that's interesting, right, that we haven't even noted. Kenneth has not once brought his Lunala. I do not see him bringing it this game as well, assuming he has the Venusaur and the Groudon in the back, but it is something to kind of pay attention to, right? Because if Sam was prepping for it and hasn't seen it once, then it's something to pay attention to. Max Guard for the Charizard, like you said, maybe trying to cover, but a Protect from the Zacian is going to stop a Thunder Wave from the Grimmsnarl. Max Airstream going into the Max Guard, so kind of a turn of nothing but stalled out turns, which is huge when you have 2 Dynamax Pokemon on the field.
Yeah, I would argue that that's probably more favorable to Kenneth because the Pokemon like Charizard, Venusaur, Colossal, those Pokemon get more value just from one turn of Dynamax. You know, all you have to do really is set up the residual, whereas other Pokemon like the Yveltal really want to be getting some kind of benefit from every single turn of Dynamax because they stack and they're exponential gains for that Pokemon. So I think the first turn essentially just being nothing is pretty good here for Kenneth. Also, the Protect's been used, so we have the threat of, once again, Thunder Wave, G-Max Wildfire onto the Zacian. So there's a lot of moving parts here to this part of the game. So this is going to be a big turn here. I think we're probably going to see the Zacian switch out. There it is. So, the Incineroar will be able to take that G-Max Wildfire if that was the call by Kenneth here.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's still that G-Max Airstream, if it's still that Max Airstream, we know that it can handle it without the sun up. Thunder Wave, though, into the Incineroar, not going to matter, thanks to that Dark typing against that Prankster. G-Max Wildfire actually targeting into the Yveltal this turn does take that really, really comfortably, though, and that means that it didn't get up an Airstream, so you getting an Airstream up this turn is going to be pretty nice, because you will at least be faster moving forward. Does bring the Charizard down to about under half of its HP here as well, but now you have the opportunity to maybe get something like a knockout on those next turns if you need to, and even also having the opportunity to fake out into that Grimmsnarl on this turn.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of options here, right? You have the fake out option with the Incineroar, but we also know that the +2 Incineroar is going to be faster than the Charizard, so if the Yveltal were to get another Airstream in, it could go for something like a Parting Shot, even a Flare Blitz, because I don't think the Airstream is quite enough to pick up the Charizard and probably leave it with just a sliver. But we do see the fake out coming in here. Really, Sam doesn't want to deal with any kind of light screen shenaniganry, and it is going to be the Max Darkness, which is boosted by both Stab and the Dark Aura. So Charizard actually survives that. I'm very surprised at that.
Actually survives that, and I'm sure Kenneth is incredibly thankful that he does not have his Groudon on the field. But still, this Max Airstream plus that Life Orb chip may still be enough to get it off the field. That still does a ton of damage, though, bringing the Incineroar down to possibly the bottom, like, third of its HP, maybe 25% there, and getting a speed boost. Thanks to the Life Orb, though, that chip is enough to get that Charizard off of the field. It did get one big turn of that G-Max Wildfire, which will be able to consistently do some more damage onto this Yveltal, but Incineroar is still kind of able to sit here pretty comfortably as well. So, that kind of wraps up the end of both of these Dynamaxes. I think for Sam, getting the Max Airstream was really important because now his Yveltal can sit on the field. Even though the Grimmsnarl on the opposite side also got an Airstream boost, it's not exactly a Pokemon that worries as much about going really fast.
This is an interesting decision from Kenneth here to bring out that Groudon. With +1, there's a very good chance that Incineroar is faster. It would be kind of weird on a team like this to be running a lot of speed investment into that Groudon. So Parting Shot is effectively free, and on top of that, the Foul Play will go off before the Parting Shot, dealing even more damage. So a bit of an interesting decision by Kenneth to bring in that Groudon here. We don't quite know what the fourth Pokemon is yet, so it's possible that it's just something like an Incineroar that's not going to be very beneficial to the end to this state of the game.
Yeah, that Foul Play did almost 50% of the HP onto that Groudon, who is now also taking a Parting Shot from the Incineroar. Gonna be dropping that attack stat, switching the Incineroar back out. He's gonna love coming back in, getting another Intimidate off, but first sending this Rillaboom back in, having the opportunity for Grassy Glides onto that Groudon. Not gonna be seeing it Gigantamax and go for a G-Max Drum solo this turn, or this game, as we already saw the Dynamax itself from the Yveltal, but it still puts on a ton of pressure here. It does at least give something for this Grimmsnarl to target into with a Thunder Wave here, but the Precipice Blade damage into this Rillaboom is really, really not too much. They're not very effective. Spirit Break, though, into the Yveltal here. The only move that Grimmsnarl could really have gone for if it was its only non-status move, thanks to the two Dark types that were originally on the field. The special attack drop as well. Getting the G-Max Wildfire is still not enough to get that knockout, but it should be on that next turn.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting situation because the Wildfire does still apply pressure here. I believe there's 1 or 2 turns left of that Wildfire, so the Yveltal needs to switch out or launch an Oblivion Wing potentially if it wants to survive. But, actually, I feel like the Oblivion Wing should be pretty safe, but it's not going to KO the Grimmsnarl, right? So if the Yveltal stays in, it probably goes down. Kenneth needs to somehow find a way around this Grassy Glide as well, which is not going to be the easiest thing in the world. The Groudon is also very, very pressured here. And really, this is just a very awkward spot for Kenneth. There's a couple things speaking for him. He does have that residual up. He does still have the Grimmsnarl, which can really be very, very disruptive. But it is that Incineroar in the back here. So that, in this individual case, it helps out quite a bit. The Grassy Glide's not going to do very much here. So that's nice at least.
Yeah, and I think Kenneth had given up on the opportunity of going for something like Sleep Powder, right? Thunder Wave from the Grimmsnarl, though, after this Grassy Glide from the Incineroar, from the Rillaboom into the Incineroar, does paralyze that Rillaboom. Yveltal goes for the Oblivion Wing this turn and does get that off into the Incineroar on the opposite side of the field. Doesn't do really all that much damage as well, so this Grimmsnarl still able to sit on the field and maybe do some stuff in the next few turns if it's not knocked out at that point. Enough HP, though, recovered from that Oblivion Wing for this Yveltal to stave off getting knocked out from that G-Max Wildfire, and all of the grounded Pokemon are going to be taking a little bit of HP recovery thanks to that grassy terrain as well.
All right, I believe Wildfire is done now. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, it is indeed done. So the Yveltal has managed to outlast that. Of course, Fake Out is still a threat here, as is the Spirit Break, but with an Incineroar in the back, a full HP Zacian, things are looking very, very awkward here for Kenneth. I feel like the only way out of this for him is to somehow retain Grimmsnarl long enough to get a Thunder Wave off on the Zacian, and then just hope that the kind of luck Sam got with Sleep Powder flips to Kenneth's side for paralysis for this game.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously feels like one of the few things you have to do, right? If you can get this Rillaboom off the field, your Groudon feels a lot better, but Rillaboom's going to leave the field first of its own accord, sending the Incineroar in, getting some more Intimidates off onto the opposing Incineroar, and also getting more Fake Out pressure on for the next few turns, possibly trying to take something as well, like a Flare Blitz in the Sun from that opposing Incineroar on the opposite side of the field if it needs to. Yveltal going for that Oblivion Wing right out of the gate this turn, though. Targets down into the Incineroar once more. Does get a little bit more damage there, but most importantly gets some extra HP recovery. Did not deal with any Fake Outs this turn, so it was able to hang on, but a parting shot from the Incineroar on Kenneth's side into the Incineroar on Sam's side. Really nice to get rid of the Rillaboom before it had swapped out into this Incineroar. So now Kenneth able to bring his Groudon back in. Sun is already up though, so it will not kind of reset that Sun or anything, but you do at least kind of have the pressure now with the opposing Incineroar on the field. Its Spirit Break though into this Yveltal, thanks to even with the HP it recovered, was not enough to hang on, so it is going to get knocked out, going to force this Rillaboom back in on Sam's side.
Alright, so 3-3 now. Technically, it's tied. But this is actually really big, though, because now the Rillaboom can come back in. Full paralysis would be a factor. Or you bring the Zacian back in. There is Fake Out pressure on Sam's side of the field. You could Fake Out Behemoth Blade into that Grimmsnarl, sure, but then you're letting an unintimidated Groudon just fire off of Precipice Blades. And while the Zacian, with this much HP, it's almost definitely EV to survive that, you open yourself up to things like crits. You open yourself up to there is damage from the Fake Out on the Incineroar side, so if there's a high roll, I don't know how much the Zacian's going to survive that with. There's a lot of moving parts here. Sam is definitely not out of the woods yet, although the situation, I would still say, does favor him. This is going to be a very critical turn, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can imagine seeing possibly the Groudon switching out here, bringing the Incineroar back in, getting an Intimidate off onto the Zacian. It takes the Behemoth Blade more comfortably if you have to. So you could try and go for the Fake Out onto the Groudon possibly if you need to, but the Grimmsnarl may be a safer option to prevent a Thunder Wave onto your own Zacian. Like, you're kind of in that weird position, right? Because if you allow your Zacian to get Thunder Wave, then you can possibly be kind of stuck in a weird spot. But this substitute, I think, is going to be really helpful for this Zacian.
Did he click it in time? I don't know if he clicked it in time.
Let's hope so. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Incineroar goes for the Intimidate on this turn here. If it was a timeout, then that is going to be, I think, a little bit unfortunate for Sam. Incineroar does get the Fake Out off into the Grimmsnarl slot, so that is at least one piece here. And the Zacian going for the Behemoth Blade, so he did time out on that turn with the substitute.
Out, but it helped him! It helped him! Oh, no!
I'm sure Kenneth has no idea that was actually not the choice, but a critical hit as well. That just feels so strange at this point. Getting Grimmsnarl off of the field, though, is pretty helpful. Like you said, you still have the opportunity. It's going to force this Groudon back in as well. Oh my goodness.
That's so sad for Kenneth. I really hope he's not watching the stream right now, but it's a very different thing to lose because your opponent read you and you're like, they got the sick read. It was they read me right. Great play. And then you turn on the stream and it's just like, oh, they're actually clicking the move I wanted them to click. They just didn't put it in fast enough. Oh no. That's really, really upsetting. All right. Is there a way out right now? Well, there is Fake Out pressure here from the Incin on Kenneth's side of the field. Precipice Blade still exists. Another timeout from Sam would help him quite a bit because then he can get Fake Out Precipice Blades in, but we'll see. I kind of doubt that's going to happen twice.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Sam right now, you're forced to kind of pay attention to it, I think, a little bit more. Because even though you got lucky on that last turn, you have to pay attention. Protect this turn, though, makes a lot of sense. You are then timing out this Sun. Fake out from the Incineroar, though, going into the Protect. Not even a Flare Blitz, but still kind of helping. Groudon going for Heat Crash, but it goes into the Heat Crash into the Incineroar on the opposite side of the field. It is not enough to get the knockout here at all, but Flare Blitz from the Incineroar on Sam's side, targeting into the Groudon on Kenneth's side. Does do a little bit of damage thanks to the Sun boost. It is not enough to get knocked out by its own recoil, and now the Sun is gone, which is definitely helping the Zacian feel more comfortable in the face of two Pokemon with two pretty good Fire-type attacks.
Yeah, this is now a very rough position. The Flare Blitz from the Incineroar, even if Kenneth manages to Flare Blitz Zacian, it's not going to KO without Sun. I don't know. I'm struggling to see a way out of this now for Kenneth. Sam has maneuvered himself into a pretty much clean, like, he's tied it into a bow. The match should be over. He has played very well, but also partially accidentally stumbled into a basically tied up winning position here. So not something I expected to see in our first match of the day. There's been a lot of things I didn't expect to see in this match, though, Maeve.
Yeah, definitely not exactly my standard commentary of matches. Incineroar, though, going for Protect this turn. Interesting to see, I think, the Protect on the Incineroar as well. Zacian going for that substitute that I think it tried to click earlier, but due to that timeout. Groudon getting the Precipice Blades off. Zacian avoids it with its substitute. Does activate the Shuka Berry on this Incineroar, but even with the 6 HP that it had at that point, or the extra that it gained from that grassy terrain, it is not going to be staying on this field for much longer. If you are Kenneth, I think you are probably just like staring daggers into your Nintendo Switch. You have to hope for full paralysis from this Rillaboom probably almost every single turn until you can get rid of it with something like a Heat Crash or a Flare Blitz. It will reset this grassy terrain as well, so honestly pretty decent timing to come back in onto the field because now it has all of those turns of that grassy terrain to put on a lot of pressure onto this Groudon.
Yeah, we're kind of out of things to say here. That was an interesting decision by Sam to go for the substitute there, potentially risking if the Precipice Blades double hits and then the Rillaboom gets full para'd, all of a sudden this becomes a very awkward game again. But it doesn't end up mattering. A big miss there. Sacred Sword should be able to, I guess it's running Play Rough, not Sacred Sword. So, Behemoth Blade, just to make sure that the Groudon goes down, was probably doubled into the Groudon slot. Going to be able to do a pretty hefty amount to the Incineroar, and that should be all she wrote here. I mean, even if the Incineroar does manage to knock things out with Flare Blitz, its HP is low enough now that it's probably going to be taking itself out along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, right, if you're Kenneth, your way out is multiple full paralysis from this Rillaboom, even with something like a Grassy Glide, if it's trying to get that damage off. And then you have to get enough damage off onto the Zacian on the opposite side, and hope that this grassy terrain recovery is going to be enough to kind of keep you in the game from taking some more Behemoth Blades. Because, I mean, we saw that it was able to kind of do a decent amount of damage, but there is at least that Intimidate that was put onto the Zacian. So I think, in a game that has had such weird RNG throughout all 3 games here, yeah, that is going to be the end. I think Kenneth has said, I don't have the mental energy to play this mind game anymore, and honestly, I don't blame him, but an incredibly interesting match, Stefan, for both of these trainers. I am, it's not every day that you get to see a match that wraps up like that.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say after a match like that. I kind of just feel really bad for Kenneth. It was a really fun match for us. We got to see a lot of stuff that you don't really see all that often in VGC. But I guess the silver lining, if you can call it that, is that Puerto Rico is already out. So it's not like this eliminated them from the tournament or anything. But you got to be a little sad if you're cheering for the Chinese team, because Sam managing to clutch that out essentially makes it so that China cannot advance anymore. There is some very hyper-specific set of results over, like, the remaining 9 matches in the group that all have to go a specific way that make it so China advances. Probably not going to happen. Just statistically very unlikely. So Sam
we had a very statistically very unlikely game last game.
That's
though.
true.
So honestly, I don't feel like you can count it out yet because of the weird sets of circumstances that we had in that last match.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for set number 3. We've now passed the halfway mark in this broadcast, but we still have 2 more sets coming your way. Coming up next, it's going to be a match from the Netherlands versus Vietnam, which is also actually a rematch from last year. The Netherlands was in the same group as Vietnam in 2021 as well. So this one's going to be pretty cool. I mean, Vietnam, unfortunately, already eliminated. They have 0 points from the first 2 games, but this has been a really, really tough group. The Netherlands still battling it out for the top 2 spots. Of course, the other 2 teams in that group are Mexico and South Korea. So a very, very strong group here. But the Netherlands really, really hoping to collect this win. If they can get the win, that's going to guarantee their spot in the top 16. So a very, very pivotal match from the perspective of the Netherlands coming up next. You guys are not going to want to miss it. Don't go anywhere.